Hello, welcome to Aging Well in America. I'm Anne Marie Gattari, your host. Every day, between 6,000 and 7,000 people turn 65 in the United States. There are approximately 5.5 million people who are aged 85 or older. In less than 30 years, that number will grow to 20 million. 20 million people will be 85 years or older in our country. Are we ready? Is America ready? There's so much good work going on around the country, around the world, and right here in our own community. And we have with us today one of those people who is doing some of that good work. I'd like to welcome and introduce Frances Shani Parker.
Yes.
Author, consultant, speaker, a whole host of things you have done really in a volunteer capacity to become an expert on elder care issues. But before we go into that, let's set the stage. You were a Detroit educator for 30 years in the Detroit schools, a principal the latter part of your career. Tell us, you have a great story of how you came into the elder care world, and then which led you to your most passionate work, which is a volunteer for hospice organizations.
Okay. First, I'd like to begin by saying what hospice is, because some people may not know. Hospice is a philosophy of quality end-of-life care for terminally ill patients and their families. And so how I ended up in hospice, I was a Detroit public school principal, and it was in an area that had a low-income housing project area. And there was a man who used to come around the school, and over a period of months, I noticed his conversations were getting rather bizarre and with invisible people, and I knew he had some form of dementia. And it turned out he also had AIDS. He also had very little family support. He was not a close friend of mine, but there was no support, and he was not in a position to take care of his own needs. So I helped him, and he eventually died. And
he died in where?
He died in a nursing home. And over a period of months, I was thinking, this probably won't happen again. I want to make it clear, too, I was not a person who was interested in, even enjoyed working with sick people. I had decided that when I was in the 5th grade, I'd be an educator. I was not attracted to the healthcare professions. So I was a little surprised a few months after he died. Then another man came along. I also did not know him well, and he also had AIDS, and I ended up helping him. At the same time, now I was still principal of a school. I had plenty to do, and I was wondering why these people were coming into my life. So after I was no longer dealing with the second man, I ran into a friend of mine who said she was a hospice volunteer, and when she told me what she did, it was pretty much what I had already been doing over the 3-year period when these two men came into my life. And so I decided to get the certification and became an official hospice volunteer. And
What
that's
is
what I've been
an
doing.
official hospice volunteer?
Well, that means you've had the classes, and you're certified by a hospice organization to go into.
And how did you use that certification, Frances?
Well, at the end of the classes, I was given an option of going to hospice patients at home or else going to nursing homes. And I chose nursing homes because I thought they would be more of a need for my service there. And I just thought it would be interesting to be in a nursing home and where I could be around a lot of people.
So you spent a good number of years in nursing homes with people at the very end of their lives.
Right, over 10 years. And I did various nursing homes, primarily in the Detroit area.
Okay. And that became the basis for your book, Becoming Dead Right, a hospice volunteer in urban nursing homes.
Right.
I'd like to read a little introduction that Dr. Peter Lichtenberg, who is the director of Wayne State's Institute of Gerontology, and people who know Dr. Lichtenberg know that when he says something, he knows what he's speaking about. And he gave you a beautiful tribute to your book. I'd just like to read a couple of sentences. Ms. Parker's book brings the stories of urban elders to the fore. Poverty, which so often makes people invisible, is not ignored here, but the stories of the human struggle, fear, kindnesses, and hopes predominate. So you have done a great service for people of the Detroit area, the urban areas all over, as he said, bringing their stories and their situations at the end of their lives to the forefront. So can you tell us a little bit about do you have a story or two that you think is really compelling? And
Well, I think probably the biggest story is the story of why the book how it really came about, because I wasn't planning on writing a book at the time, but in the nursing homes, where there are so many stories, I did my own research and I found out that there really weren't any books out there that dealt with urban nursing homes with people who were in hospice care, and also there weren't the voices of people of color weren't being represented. So I decided to write a book, and that's how the book. That's the biggest story, because as I said, I hadn't planned on writing a book, but I saw there was a need. And the reason why that diversity is so important is that over 75 million baby boomers are already becoming seniors, and they're taking care of their parents, and they are a very diverse population. And while I was being a hospice volunteer, I often wrote poems and prose about what I was doing, and I was active in Detroit's writing community, and I would be reading these at different venues. And I noticed there was a great need among people. People would come up to me afterwards and tell me about their caregiving stories and how they were handling their bereavement. So I knew that there was a need for people to know more about it. There are so many stories I can tell you.
Tell us one.
One is that, okay, this is a story that was a real challenge for me. I had one patient, and basically she did not communicate. She made sounds, and once in a while she would say a few words. But when I would go there to visit her, I never was sure what she wanted, and so I was, trying everything. But I would just keep on talking, just like I'm talking to you. And I find that whenever I went, I always made sure I looked around the room, because I'm always going to be an advocate, and that's what a volunteer should be when you go around. Anyway, I knew from her, the paper I received when she was assigned to me, that she was Baptist, she was from the South. And so I thought, well, maybe she, might like gospel music. And because I knew Mahalia Jackson is considered one of the greatest gospel singers of all time. So I decided I would get some of Mahalia Jackson's music, and this was before iPods. And so I used a CD player, and I put the headphones on her. And this is a woman who had just been lying in bed most of the time. I mean, weeks and weeks, little responding. Once in a while, she'd whisper something. Anyway, I put the headphones on, and I turned on Let the Saints Go Marching In. And the next thing I knew, her eyes popped open. She actually started clapping, which was really surprised me. And she was clapping right along with the music, like she was in a choir in Alabama somewhere. And, I knew I had reached her. And she actually whispered, "It's beautiful." And I wrote a poem about this. And at the very end, it says, "A CD player is such an easy thing for me to bring. But before I left, you said you loved me twice."
Oh, my.
So that was a really moving story.
Yeah, it is. That's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that.
And there's so many, and that's another story that shows the importance of music with patients.
Like you said, a CD player is so easy to bring. And,
right, it was.
And really that translates into anyone who is, even if they're not in hospice or at the end of their life, if dementia or anyone who doesn't have a lot of activities in their day, in their elder years.
Right.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. Speaking about nursing homes, you chose nursing home hospice as opposed to going into people's individual homes. To spend your volunteer time, and you had explained you thought that the voices of that population was not being heard. How do you, during the time you were doing it, when you were really involved, tell me about some changes that you may have seen, changes for the better, of course.
Well, slowly, changes are being made. There's a movement going on around the country, and it's called cultural change in nursing homes. And basically what it's about is making nursing homes more person-centered. And by person-centered, it means residents plus the staff, everybody will have input, and what's going on will be more like a real home and more reflective of everybody's needs. So what is beginning to happen and would be like changes in schedule. Everybody may not want to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and, you know, eat breakfast. Changes in when everybody eats, takes a shower. Changes in like bringing more nature into.
I'm sorry, Francis, when you say changes, so so the residents themselves are not on such a strict schedule.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Right, that's exactly what I mean. So because it's more person-centered.
Right.
So whatever each person wants. I want to emphasize too that almost all of my patients shared a room with 3 other people. If you can imagine that you're dying and there may be 2 other people in the room with dementia and some other illnesses. So also more privacy, more nature coming in, more technology. And when I say technology, I mean things that are going to give the staff more time to be with patients, because some of the things that are going on are now in technology. Now, I won't even get into robots, but robots are also something coming along in the future, not only for nursing homes, but also for patients at home. So there are a lot of things that are taking place, but they aren't taking place fast enough. And at the very last chapter of my book is called Baby Boomer Haven. And what I did was, rather than just make up a nursing home and, you know, just come up with some ideas on my own, I researched and found best practices going on all around the country and created an imaginary nursing home that really isn't imaginary, because everything going on is going on somewhere, but it's not going on in enough nursing homes.
Right,
So,
and as a package.
As a package.
Yeah.
So people can read at the end, this is what an ideal nursing home should look like. So you have, and not all, because even in the architecture, so you have a circular path so that people with dementia don't have to walk into, you know, a dead end and not know what to do and get confused. There's just so many things that can take place in a person-centered home where people are honored. People come to a nursing home. I always compare nursing homes. I have a chapter where I compare it to schools, because it's just like students come and then they graduate. And so I always say when people come, they have a history. And so it needs to be known. And at my school where I was principal, it was called a school-wide service learning school. Every child in the school and the staff all did service. And so we had a partnership with nursing homes. So, and it's tied in with the curriculum. So like in 4th grade, after students learned how to write letters, they actually wrote letters to people in nursing homes or else to children's hospital. So, and that component is also in this ideal nursing home.
So in this ideal nursing home, there would be obviously a role, and I'm thinking a big role for volunteers.
Oh, big role for volunteers.
So what is, excuse me, what is the volunteer's day like in a nursing home?
Are you talking about a hospice volunteer?
Yes, from your experience.
Okay, right, because you know, it's a little different when you, because as a hospice volunteer, I'm going in not, first of all, I may be going to see a total stranger, but I'm going in to see someone who is, who has been diagnosed as having 6 months to live. They are terminally ill. Even though they may live more than 6 months, actually most people in hospice live only an average of 3 weeks. And some of them need to be, a lot of them need to be referred a lot sooner. But what I go in and do is, first of all, look around the room to see what's been going on. You can learn a lot. If I see a glass and there's no ice or water in it, they may be thirsty. You can, you know, you look over the person, see how they're being dressed, if they have bruises. There's so many things you can learn just looking at a person in a room. And of course, I act as a companion. I give wheelchair rides. I talk to them. I write letters. I find out where they're coming from, what they like, what they enjoy to talk about, and and we go from there. And if they have dementia, you know, it's the same thing. I talk just like I'm talking to you and see where they are and accommodate.
How much time would you spend with one patient?
I spend at least 2 hours.
Really?
Each visit, and that would be maybe once a week. But I want to emphasize too that to be a hospice volunteer, you don't have to have direct care with patients. They also have hospice volunteers because some people say they're not comfortable with that. So there are things people can do that are in line with their own comfort zone. They can be involved with fundraising. They can do community education,
Oh, that's wonderful
outreach.
to know.
They have pet therapy. You may have a pet that you can get trained, and they can come in and visit. And clerical work too.
One of the hospice volunteers that visited my dad when he was on hospice was a music therapist.
Okay.
So it was a young woman who played the guitar, and she came a handful of times and sang to him, and he loved it.
You know, I'm so glad you're saying that because a lot of times people have talents.
Yes.
And I have a blog. It's called Hospice and Nursing Homes blog. And the post I just put up yesterday, in fact, is two barbers. And they go into the nursing homes and
give haircuts.
And they actually go into people's homes and give haircuts. And they have a video along with it so you can see them doing it. And these are people who they just decided to use their talent. So there are other things to do if you really don't want to be involved with patient care. But that's not the person, some people assume, but each person has to know what they're comfortable doing.
You mentioned hair care.
Yeah.
We know that women, elderly women, one of the most important appointments of the week is to their hairdresser. And I know there are salons in almost every independent and assisted living. Are there enough salons, hair salons, in the nursing homes that you've been in?
I've seen them with salons. I'm not sure if they're enough.
Because that's something a hairdresser could do, right? Volunteer their time.
Well, in a nursing home they could do that. Because some people have gone in and just done their nails or whatever. But the main thing is, in terms of volunteering, just do it and go in. And for people who have relatives or friends in nursing homes particularly, but also even those at home, because there's the research shows that caregivers, and particularly those who are caregivers at home or wherever they are, of people with dementia, have a higher loneliness factor than the general population, which means that there are some people, when you become the caregiver of someone with dementia or just someone who is terminally ill, sometimes your friends don't approach you as much. They think maybe you can't do whatever it is, the social thing that they want to do, or maybe they just don't want to talk about it.
Oh, that's very interesting. I've not heard that.
Yeah, so those, I'm saying those are things we need to reach out to.
Yes.
If you have friends or relatives, and what you can do is find out what